Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Forgive me for the lighting, but I don't think the lighting is important. I think it's the message. This is the first time I've camed up in a while since my surgery. My nose doesn't look all weird now, so I feel comfortable camming up. But Ramadan Mubarak to all my Muslim friends and yeah, day 4 of Ramadan. I'm sorry for the last couple of days. Unfortunately, y'all, I haven't been fasting with y'all because I've been healing and stuff, and a lot of people recommended me not to fast until the healing process is over. So I think I'll start fasting at the beginning of next week because the pain is not as intense as it used to be. And I've been taking my medication and my nose is a little bit more healed and it's not bleeding as much, but there's still crust and build up and I have to keep on using nasal spray. But anyway, um, I tried to upload a video 2 days ago about a fallout that I had with my father. Um, and that's why I call this Sins of the Father. And this is going to be part 2 of that because I still respect him for what he did. I'm still respected for being my life, but I have to be honest. And I feel like, each generation of youth kind of gets sidelined and told to not confess their disappointment with their leadership and their leadership of parenthood in the previous generation. And I think that's the reason that we have so many problems is that happens at your generation or generation. Like you can't criticize what they do, but yet they're the same people that criticize everything the youth do and their shortcomings and the way that the world's going down. And a lot of them are kind of blindsided and full of pride and arrogance, and they don't examine their own shortcomings, right? So I called my dad, and my dad was to be very honest, I'm going to be very blunt. He was an abuser. He was very abusive to pretty much everyone in my household except for my youngest sister. And then on top of that, he basically abandoned and neglected my 2 oldest sisters or whatever. And the reason he neglected them is because they were the product of a basically baby mama, baby daddy thing with a German woman that he met when he was over in Germany. And he didn't want to bring back home a half black, children, biracial children. And I asked him why that. And he came up with the whole buffer race and stuff like that, excuses. And honestly, it was freaking disgusting. Like for somebody to say that. And that's when it comes to race, especially the fact that somebody can impregnate someone and then look at their offspring as being lesser than, I think that's freaking disgusting. And there's no excuse for that. And especially as a black man, I realize that only exasperates the stereotype of black men being nothing but, baby makers and stuff. That's the reputation that black men we've had around the world. I mean, people tell us people all the time, like, don't date a black man because he just cares about sex. And then when you have a child, he's going to leave you and high and dry. And, it sucks because that's a very minority group of them. But that ripple effect, takes its toll after a period of time because the culture basically excuses it and tolerates it. You know what I mean? As well as a lot of stuff, same thing with abuse. You know what I mean? There's one thing, there's a difference between discipline and abuse. And all too often, I think we as a community don't know the difference between the two. And it's ironic that we talk about the abuse of the oppressor and how, the oppressor treated us on the plantation and stuff, but we treat our children like that when we're angry with them. I think it's really ironic. So, yeah, I think it's very important to realize that. And I don't have any children, but, inshallah, I hope to bring children into this world, even though this world's pretty much far gone, especially in the West, but like culturally, especially. But I want to have this sense of like, I'm their father, I'm their matriarch, but at the same time, that doesn't excuse me from my shortcomings. Like, I can't even think of any time my dad has apologized for anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always find myself as a man, I honestly kind of get sick of it, of how transparent I am with my shortcomings, because I am that way more than a lot of people I know. Like a lot of people, even when they make mistakes, they'll just kind of like sweep it under the rug. And unless they know they're going to be exposed for something, they're going to keep quiet about it. And you know what? Actually, that's probably why they're better ahead, than me or a lot of other people, is they're able to just kind of sweep it under the rug. But to me, I have a lot of guilt and shame of things that I've done during my life. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've hurt people. I burned bridges, and I'm not proud of that at all. And the reason that I started this channel is to tell my story, and maybe it'll give dawah to some people about my journey and why they led me to my deen and how I'm a better person since then. and how I wish I did that, because I got called to Islam way before that, but I still was arrogant and I ignored the signs, and I still kept on engaging in the lifestyle that I was engaging in. And, it took, hitting rock bottom again, to kind of force me to put myself in a position where I accepted it, and that's unfortunate, because I don't think everybody that's a revert, a lot of people that I talk to, especially black men, it's like, oh, when they're in prison or something like that, led them to find Islam if they weren't born in a Muslim family, unfortunately. But yeah, I think, especially in these spaces and red pill spaces, actually, I don't consider myself part of red pill space, but I consider myself a part of the quote unquote manosphere. One thing I noticed in the manosphere is there's not an accountability to the words of men, because it's very easy for us to point at the females, and we already know the game. But the reason that they're able to give away with what they get with is that the boomers, especially, they sold out to future generations of men, with, whether it be divorce laws, culture, the materialism, the consumerist culture, the sexual norms and stuff. That was really generated by the boomers. And, especially young men have really been sabotaged, I think, before they were even born. Because we had to navigate now being in a world that's hostile to masculinity, that's hostile towards men. You know what I mean? And the previous generation has sold out this generation for the almighty dollar. Really, there's no other explanation, right? And honestly, the boomers were the biggest simps of all time. You know what I mean? Because they allowed these laws to come up with and these cultural attitudes towards men, basically peripherate. Sorry, my tongue's a little dry, but they allowed it to happen in order to, appease themselves and to get the woman that they wanted and stuff. Because the way I see it is, when the sexual revolution happened, feminists, there was a backdrop of especially radical feminists. They were like, yeah, this is good because this allows us to be promiscuous and to control our bodies, birth control, Roe versus Wade, and all that stuff. But at the same time, it was just like, hey, all the sexual revolution really did was have allow men to have easier sexual access towards women, because before that, it was considered pretty much, sex before marriage was always a thing, but it was kind of frowned upon, especially if it resulted in a pregnancy or promiscuity too. So they were like, hey, I know this for certain because I've been in a lot of feminist spaces. So I've even seen it happen in this generation where men really value female validation. And so they go out of their way to appease women. And that's the way that they kind of expect to get into relationships and have sex and stuff like that. Is they really aren't comfortable with themselves. So what they do is they drink the Kool-Aid of feminism, and they basically suck up to it as a way to get access towards women, because some women are very adamant of the identity that they're feminist and stuff. And so men are really intimidated by that. So they have the men that won't speak their mind because they're worried about, offending someone and burning bridges and things like that, looking upon as sexist and misogynist. So what they do is they cower towards, that ideal, and they basically suck it up in order to be, that person's partner. But what I've always seen is it really is what a woman still won't respect you because she sees that you cower towards her needs, And I've seen tons of quote unquote feminist women, cheat on their boyfriends, with Chads and Tyrones, as they say. I've seen them divorce them just as much as they would divorce a husband that wasn't that. And men, but however, really think that because they're empathetic towards a woman, that's going to be the end all be all, and that's going to shelter them from losing someone in a partnership. And it's not true. You can be the female whisperer and be, telepathic, not telepathic. I'm trying to think of the word, but you can read people's minds and stuff like that. It's be psychic towards women's needs and know what their wants and needs are, and bend your need to every want a need. But that's still not going to make you work out with her in the long run, because in my opinion, especially, Women love to be challenged. Actually, you know what? People that have something going on love being challenged. As a man, I love being challenged, especially if it's something that I know I can do. I like stepping up to the plate. That women love challenging their men, challenging their partners and stuff all the time. That's just a part of who they are, because they find a guy that's just lazy and just sticks around. I mean, they're only gonna tolerate that for so long, because they notice guys that are applying themselves, that are bettering themselves professionally, educationally, spiritually, sexually, whatever, man. You know what I mean? And I've seen this firsthand. I mean, I've seen a lot of women cheat on their boyfriends, and the guys they cheat on the most are guys that don't have anything going on for themselves. They sit on the couch smoking weed, drinking beer all day, stuffing their face with pizza, watching Netflix and playing video games all day, not being in shape. You know, in the long run, you're not going to be able to keep her based off of that, man. And it's a hard pill to swallow for some guys, because some guys are really egotistical, because the biggest validation that most men have is once we get sexual access to a woman, we think that's the end all be all. You know what I'm saying? Like we really, I guess, sabotage ourselves, because it's like, oh, well, she has sex with me, so I must be doing something right, you know? And then women kind of play themselves like that too. They complain about guys' lack of ambition, this, that, and the third, or how, this guy isn't, the man that they really want, but you're having sex with them. If you have sex with a man, what you're doing is you're validating them and making them feel like they're at the peak accomplishment of their life, man. And I can tell you, from a guy's perspective, there's nothing more validating than when you finally get the girl that you want and you lay with her, because that makes you feel like a king. That makes you feel like it is, at the end of the day, regardless, it is a conquest, right? No matter how anybody looks at it, it is a conquest, at least from a male perspective. But we have to be honest about that, because I know it's passe looked upon as misogynist, but it is what it is. It's biological, right? And it's the same thing on guys' ends, right? Like let's say your girlfriend's putting on weight and she doesn't look attractive anymore, but you still have sleeping with her. What you're doing is you're letting her know that, she's doing the right thing. She's obviously still physically attractive enough to have sex with. So what's the incentive for her to go to the gym? Right? So let me go back on topic a little bit. I think that especially, I never grew up in, especially a Muslim community, but I grew up in the Black community, African American community, melanated community, whatever. And I think the things are getting so far gone is because we haven't held ourselves accountable. Black men haven't held ourselves accountable. And I'm not saying this like a male feminist or womanist or whatever. I'm diametrically opposed to those ideologies. But one thing I will give them credit with is that we dropped the ball. And I understand why, because we're facing so much adversity from outside forces. But at the same time, that doesn't really excuse it, because, you look at Jim Crow South and all that stuff, like when it was racism was like, at the forefront, those generations of Black men still provided for their families, still did the right thing. And for whatever reason, the boomers just chopped off the handle. And I really don't know why, And I think about, like, everybody of that generation also acts like they're somehow active with, the civil rights movement, the Black Panthers and stuff. A lot of those people, they weren't involved with those movements at all. They were just getting by. And especially when the 70s happened, a lot of people were just chasing tail. Honestly, a lot of Black men, they were just going out to the discos and having fun and smashing this girl, smashing that girl, and it was a time before AIDS and things like that. And they were doing it raw. They might have had a baby here, a baby there. I mean, trust me, I've been in the sauna and I've heard even stories from guys going overseas and being like, oh, I'm not going to go back there because I might have a kid there. And what kind of attitude is that? And what kind of attitude is there that you would impregnate someone with your seed and you want nothing to do with them? That's so disgusting. That's just like the same thing with abortion, right? Like, if you're a woman and you feel like you're not ready to have a child, why are you engaging in sexual activity? Unprotected. That doesn't make any sense. It's because you have an animal instinct, so you can't control yourself. Same thing with men. It's like you can't control yourself. Like, if you're worried about having children with a woman that you don't like, but you like her enough to have sex with her, but if you're worried about having a child like that, hey, have that conversation. Are you taking the pill? You know what I'm saying? Like, use condoms, this, that, and the third. But that's too hard for people, apparently. And it's not really too hard. It's just laziness. Honestly, I think it's very American. I think it's a very American concept to do those things. Because we're a culture of convenience. It's convenient not to have those hard conversations. And we're paying the price for it right now, unfortunately. So I don't know. Like, I don't really know where else to elaborate on this. I think I might do this as a series. I do the sins of the father, part 3, 4, and stuff like that. And hopefully I can get some more people to chime in, inshallah. But yeah, I think this is very, very important that the previous generations, they are not beyond criticism. We need to analyze our parents and grandparents about their shortcomings so we don't repeat them. Because that's why I love history. Is like history is doomed to repeat itself. And how far people love mathematics and science and all these other things, right? But nobody ever takes time to look at history. And it's not just like history of different empires and technology and stuff. No, it's the history of the history of your family, interpersonal relationships, the history of your community, the history of your neighborhood. Because when we analyze that, we'll prevent ourselves from really making the same mistakes. But for whatever reason, people don't value that, and it's because it's a hard conversation, I guess. Like, science and mathematics is really tangible. There's an incentive of like money and technology and things like that. But history doesn't really have that. History is an interpersonal thing that's kind of almost a metaphysical, anthropological way of viewing human existence and how human beings operate the way they are. It ties in with psychology, it ties in with anthropology, archaeology, all those things kind of like mend in with history, you know what I mean? And we kind of analyze ourselves in society through those lenses, especially sociology. I mean, that's like the history of, different social groups and how they interconnect together and social norms and stuff. But I mean, it really sucks, especially if you're like, as a dad, one thing I look forward to when I have children is being honest about my stories and being honest about what I was going through when I was young. The loss, the feeling of isolation, alienation, the feeling that I was kind of just locked in my own head and that nobody could relate to me. The feeling of being denied access to help. You know what I mean? And I'll let them know that, like, hey, they can always talk to me about everything. I even think about, like, with my dad and, for a long time with my mom too, but, we kind of reconciled our differences. But I remember when I talked to my dad about, things that are really bothering me, when I was suffering through like anxiety, especially like hardcore, he could never give me like any solstice. And if you can't do that yourself, hey, I'm not really, you shouldn't shame the person for not giving you peace of mind or giving you good advice, because some people are ill-equipped for that. That's why there's professionals that do that. So what that person should do, honestly, is take it upon themselves to show people these avenues to get help. But he never did that, because mental health and all those things are a tough conversation. I mean, even when my parents divorced and I was going through hell back then, I remember one time I literally went up to my mom and said, hey, my parents, and both my mom and my dad, several times, be like, hey, I don't feel right. I need to get help. And then just tell me just to suck it up, essentially. I mean, you know how much that hurts, especially once you do get help and you know how to navigate things a lot better. I mean, I could only, I look back upon like time and the fact that you never get it back. And we never get our time back. And so what we kind of do is we feel this guilt and shame of knowing that we missed opportunities, that we shot ourselves in the foot because we didn't know how to navigate through our emotions, through our traumas and things like that. And that the resources were out there. However, the people that were responsible for us and our guardians, they didn't put us in those positions to get help for whatever reason, right? It could be a myriad of reasons. But yeah, that's all I have for this video. I know I did this one pretty late. I did come back late. I prayed a little Tawheed. Then I got something to eat before everything closed down. Came back home, ran a few errands, and starting to feel a little bit better or whatever like that. But the pain still comes back every now and then. But thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I really appreciate this. Having this opportunity to talk to you guys. If you can relate or if you disagree with what I just said in this video, please leave a comment and we can get a discussion going by all means. Be part of the conversation. This is what their space is about. It's not about me. It's about us connecting together, as fellow brothers and sisters in humanity, and trying to make sure that we can solve as many societal ills while we're still here, especially for the next generation, inshallah. So that's all I have. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Take care, guys.